throughout this process, the yearly process, my job on the city side is to take care of a lot of the city side matters, work with our consultants, and really Frank is the person that takes care of this show. But if there's anything that comes up that is kind of painful during the process, or there's something we can improve, or there's something online, my goal is to take a very cumbersome process and make it as painless as possible. There's still, when we have federal requirements, it's going to be very detailed, it's going to be onerous, but if there is something we can take a look to make your life a little bit easier, we do want to try to do that. So appreciate being here this morning.
Hi there. My name is Melanie House. I work for Hospice of the Valleys. I'm the development coordinator. I'm also the grant writer. And I've been there 3.5 years, and I've been working with Frank and the city of Temecula through that whole time. And the funding helps our senior assistance program, which provides compassionate hospice care to anyone that needs it in Temecula, and make sure that we never turn anyone away due to no insurance or underinsured, et cetera. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I work for the city of Temecula. I'm management assistant. Been there about 2 years now. And I'm just kind of here learning this new process with Lacey.
And I'm Lacey. I work for the city of Temecula in the community services department, and I'm the department analyst. I support homeless outreach as well, including our homeless prevention and diversion program, which is what's been funded by CDBG in the past.
And I'm Mike Wooten. I'm the manager in our homeless outreach division. So we all work real closely with the funding that we receive for financial assistance.
I'm Mary Stein with Habitat for Humanity Inland Valley, and I've been with the agency about 11 years. And currently we are working through a critical home repair program with CDBG here in Temecula.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Craig Oliver with Fair Housing of Riverside County. I'm the outreach specialist with the CDBG and a couple of other programs. Essentially what we do is ensure there's no discrimination in the sale, rental, or financing of housing throughout the county. But we have other services as well, first-time home buyers program, and loss mitigation. People who are running in trouble, help them get back in good favor with their lender and so forth. And thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Hi, my name is Mina Shaker. I'm for Fair Housing Council of Riverside also, but I am in the financial side. So he will help us in the program side.
Good morning. I'm Diane Sitar. I'm with Assistance League. We're an all-volunteer organization, so I'm a volunteer with Assistance League. And we previously to 2022, we outsourced our grant writing. We've taken it in-house, and so I'm it now. So I'm the grant writer, and we fund a good a portion of our Operation School Bell program, which we, in this calendar year, will provide approximately school closed for approximately 1,800 children this year in the area that are low to moderate income. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brianna Miller with Voices for Children, or the CASA program, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and we are, for those that may not know, we provide volunteer advocates for children in foster care in all of Riverside and San Diego counties. But I always love being amongst fellow nonprofits that are fighting the good fight, so good morning.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Again, really appreciate the turnout this morning. Really appreciate all the individual services that you all provide. As far as the funding that does go for CDBG, in a grantee size of Temecula, obviously we know there's definitely some, I want to say, I wish there could be more money in that regard. So we appreciate everybody's time and effort that does go through this NOFA process that we're here to discuss again today. NOFA being that Notice of Funding Availability for the 23-24 program year. So that being said, we'll kind of highlight some of the main schedule kind of highlights here, the key milestones and what we're looking at for the program year. As we mentioned, we are currently in our 22-23 program year, and so we want to make sure that we're addressing all of that correctly here for you all in the upcoming 23-24 program year. Those obviously that have shown up today, you all did receive my email, so appreciate it, or you got it some way to be able to get here today. So thank you all. We'll also be having an evening session in case if anybody else that you may be aware of that is interested in this funding. One of the key elements that we did release a few weeks back, so November 15th was the date in which we released the actual NOFA, the email blast that went out with all the attachments, the actual notification and active link for what you see on the screen here today. Is the actual electronic application, and I definitely want to give kudos to Brandon and any of the staff there at the city that has participated in the development of that electronic application. For those of you, I think since I've been here, I think it was like November of 2015, we were in that still typable Word document and everything like that. So we've come and made a lot of strides here in making sure that we're able to capture the information that we need, put it in a format in which you all feel comfortable, and we are open always to that feedback as well. If you guys run into any technical issues, please don't hesitate. Let us know, let me know, so we can work with the team and make sure that we troubleshoot those and always constantly strive to improve on that application. So that being said, that was released on November 15th. Today being December 1st, we're here today to discuss that. Kind of just briefly walk through the application process. For those that did receive it, there's also a printable handout of the attachments that were on the email, mainly highlighting the instructions for the application. And then what we wanted to do was also make sure that we provide a couple key elements, not necessarily changes, but something as far as registrations for what we call, I know in years past we would request DUNS numbers or Dun and Bradstreet numbers, whereas this year, as of April of last year, actually, HUD has kind of gone away from the acknowledgement of that Duns and Bradstreet number to what we call a UEI, or Unique Entity Identifier. So there's also some key elements and instructions, a PDF page there where we would want to make sure that you guys register and have that number for the application. It doesn't, from my knowledge, it takes about, I think, 30 to 45 minutes to register, if I'm not mistaken, for that process, or maybe those who have gone through it can highlight that time frame. But you will also get a confirmation of that number. It's forget the amount of numbers, but you get a unique cage code or unique identifier number that we will go ahead and have you place into the application. But step-by-step process with screenshots are available on that PDF that you'll see in the email. And if you want to leave with the hard copy today, you can. What we'll move on to next as far as the timeline and scheduling, as we mentioned, we're here today for the application workshop. The deadline for the application submittals would be December 16th. So we always typically will place the application workshop somewhere in the middle between the release of the actual document and the deadline of the submittal applications, just because we obviously know coming off of a holiday, hopefully everybody had a good one. We want to make sure that you, have had a chance to take a look at it, immerse yourself with the document if you've had the time, and if not, now's that kind of that midweek or that mid-period of the NOFA that, we could address any questions you might have if you haven't had a chance to look at it. No, again, like I mentioned, no real major changes to the program or the actual application itself, so no real surprises there in that regard. After the deadline of December 16th, we take a few weeks to go through every single application, determine for eligibility. As far as CDBG requirements, we take a look at a couple of things. We look at the application from a standpoint of not only does it meet a HUD national objective, we also make sure that it entails and actually hits on the topics of the city's consolidated plan that was recently done. So we want to make sure that we're touching base on all of those components and those requirements there, so that way we're providing an action plan with those recommended funded activities come April and going into May. Once those reviews have come up, we will be working with the subcommittee staff as well. So we would anticipate, and you all, those that do submit an application will be notified of a finance subcommittee that, just generally speaking, we're looking in the month of February of 2023 for that meeting. We would then, at that meeting, there will be either some direction to either present your application or present your program. As far as that, we would typically open it up to the subcommittee if they happen to have any questions about any of the applications, as we prepare a binder set for them with a summary of all of the activities that have been requested funding. at that point, they would make some funding recommendations that would then be put into a draft action plan that we anticipate to put out in March, late March, about March 27th. That will most likely run through April 25th. So we have to do a 30-day public review period for that document. Again, we also want to make sure we're including the community within how these funds are actually allocated and spent. So we allocate that as a CDBG requirement for a 30-day public review period. You all are always encouraged to review that document as well. That document would carry the recommendations from the Finance Subcommittee at that time. At the end of that 30-day public review period, at around April 25th, which would most likely be the second meeting in April, that's when we anticipate to take that draft document to City Council for approval. Again, any subject to all the recommendations are subject to change, based off of City Council approval. It will go to a vote, and so we also will keep you guys in the loop on that to ensure that if you guys want to be present at that location, at that meeting, you guys can, but I would anticipate that being the second meeting in April. We would then submit that official approved document into HUD, so that way it's in their system, and that way they are aware of how City of Temecula is allocating its CDBG funds for the 23-24 program year. And then our program year would actually start on July 1st of 2023. We would also then, in that month of July too, issue any award letters and everything like that, let you all know. We typically, also in the month just right before the start of the program year, we typically will have a subrecipient workshop for those that were actually approved through the City Council process or through that draft document. We will open it up and kind of go through a little bit more detail of forms and documents that need to be in for record retention and your files throughout the year. So at that point, we would actually then kick off the year and then let you all run your programs and do what you all do best. Regarding timeline, schedule, or any of the key milestones there that I mentioned, do we have any questions or any items of concern at that point?
Just a couple things to add. We've added, and this is the first time you've applied in the last few years, we've added requirements to upload your certificates of insurance. It's really important to us that we get those during the process, because what I've found when I picked up the program from the city side is we spend literally months trying to get certificates of insurance after the fact. So we're trying to get all those up front. It helps expedite the process, or we at least know you have insurance. You may also see emails from a company named Gallagher. We get a lot of questions on whether that's spam or phishing. It is a legitimate company that the city contracts with. So please take a look at those Gallagher emails, because they're basically telling you what you need to do, or it's time to update your insurance, or we need additional endorsements. So please take a look at that. We're really trying to make the insurance part of this process go smoother, because it really takes us 2 months to go through it. And we want to minimize the amount of time so that we can pay faster. And that's my goal, is the time that you provide services to when we pay is to continue to narrow it. So please help us out with the insurance requirements.
Thank you for that, Brandon, too, as well. And again, like Brandon mentioned, there are components, and we're going to kind of breeze through the screen here. I'd rather touch base on the key elements of the application in case anybody has any questions, or if you've already looked at it, if you've run into any technical difficulties, please let us know. We'll kind of highlight that, but again, thank you, Brandon, for bringing those items up, because again, I know it may seem redundant on a yearly basis when we request these documents, such as your articles of incorporation or your bylaws or anything else like that, where we've actually slotted your IRS 990 for the most recent program year and everything like that, or your 501c3 letter of designation. We want to collect that to make sure that we have that, again, readily available in the way it comes back over to us. It comes as a full, complete package, so that, again, huge shout out to Brandon and the staff here to making that process happen. It streamlines things a lot easier for us from the file record retention process. So although it may seem redundant that we have to do that every year, we appreciate it, as we know. And I believe one of the last items that we had from last year, comments from last year, was when you started the application, it was an opportunity to save it, and continue on and come back to it. So I know in prior years it was kind of like, sit down and get through it all, but I think they were able to work through that, and that's still an option today. So again, if you haven't done so already, you can work on the application, you can pause, save a draft, and then it'll come back to you. I believe it sends you an email notification with the link that'll get you right back to your specific application. Okay. You'll probably see me turn a little bit sideways here, and I apologize if I'm blocking the view here for you all there. But starting on page 1 of the application, there's 9 screens that you'll see total. Again, for those that are very familiar with our NOFA process, no real major changes in aspects of the information that we're requesting. We formulate the application in a way where we really ask the specific questions that get myself, I'll say it, as we review the applications, the information that we need to, again, determine eligibility, determine agency capacity, and determine a budget that is feasible within City of Temecula's CDBG budget. I cannot stress it enough to advise you all. I cannot tell you what amount to request or anything like that in that regard. Submit what you would like to submit for your program. It does get evaluated, and if there are any, again, it's not Brandon, it's not myself who determined the funding, amounts. Again, we do incorporate the city's finance subcommittee for that process as well. And as far as that justification, you all can be part of that process as we continue on. So page 1 really factors in a lot of just basic agency information. I'll kind of highlight just really briefly again the organization name. The real big major change that you will see on this page is what I was briefly discussing, and I'll spend a little bit of time on it, is what we call the transition from the DUNS number request to the UEI. So that, again, stands for Unique Entity ID. And what you'll see as part of the PDF attachments that was on your email, and or if the packet, if you'd like to receive one here, we have a couple extras in case anybody doesn't have one. If you scroll to if you were to flip through to the last few pages, should be the last 5. There's I provided a quick start guide with step-by-step process on how to obtain that UEI number. Again, that's going to be very, very key that we need all agencies to submit that number for us. Rick.
On that, the number, you should be applying for that well in advance of that December 16th deadline. It will take a few days for that number to be processed, so please do that, I would say, today. That way you can process and have that number in place. So don't wait till the deadline to get that number.
Thank you, Brandon. Yes, and in that regard, the reason being, again, we HUD typically utilize the DUNS number, and what we would typically do is utilize your DUNS number and do a search through SAM.gov, which is the System of Award Management. The reason why we do a SAM verification is that's the federal government's central database as far as any acknowledgement or any issues for debarment. In most cases, nonprofits aren't usually doing anything wrong in that case, or if they've been flagged for anything as far as, there's a lot of, we see it from a labor compliance standpoint with contractors or anything like that, if there's been any issues or any, issues to be identified, but essentially what it does, and I believe you do have to keep this number registered as well, so just continue, just because you get it once, make sure you're adhering to those, keeping it logged in, making sure that those requirements are fulfilled, if there's any required documents to upload as part of that process. But obtaining that, I have provided you, it does seem a little lengthy, but it's only because there's screenshots of the screen there for those 5 pages to walk you through that process of how to obtain that UEI number. So again, that being the major change from page 1. The other information on the first screen, again, are key elements about the program. Again, more so about the agency, organization, we need your mailing address, and we also need the organization, it'll ask for the location, the persons and contact information that are A, authorized to sign, and B, someone that is going to be our program contact. So typically that allows me to obviously avoid either if it's, I don't want to say avoid, but executive directors if they're not the ones involved in the program, or anybody else that's directly related to the program, definitely include their contact information if it's different from someone that's authorized to sign. Questions?
I see one spot there for name and title. Our contracts require 2 signatures. How do I fill in 2 then?
What you can do on that one, you'll actually, as part of that process, so we slot for 1, but what you'll also do is at the very end, one of the required documents is a certificate of resolution. On that aspect, and in the instructions, we definitely acknowledge City of Temecula requires at least a minimum of 2 signatures for authorized. If you do take your application or you have certificate of resolution where you have authorized or your agency has authorized at least 1 signature, you are okay, you'll be uploading that document, and you are only required to submit one signature if that's the case. So if you do have that in place, or if you're going to a board meeting and you guys are making that an actual resolution as part of this process, highly recommend it. It usually makes the turnaround time of getting 2 signatures around this time of period. I know a lot of people either start going on vacations and things like that, but it does help us out as far as the timing for us on this action plan. So, but great question. Only one required on the application, but we always double check that certificate of reso. All right, and again, basic other information such as federal tax ID, like we mentioned, contact and SAM's registration numbers, email address, and then the name of person as far as contact there. Any questions on screen 1? No. All right, and then, just wanted to again highlight here, this is that function that we were discussing about earlier. It's the save as draft function down here on the bottom left. It's available on every screen of the application. So if for some reason you get pulled away, I don't know, and maybe Brandon might know the question, if there's any inactivity on the screen, that just make sure you hit save as a draft. If not,
Yeah, there is a time limit. I want to say it's about probably like 5 minutes or something like that. So if you're not doing anything, so do hit that save as a draft if you anticipate walk away from the screen.
yeah. What do they always say? Save and save often. Yeah. So awesome. Thank you, Brandon, because yeah, that was one item I may have had. In that regard, screen 2, we're going to continue on with now a little bit more of the specific program information. So now that we've got your basic kind of organization information, contact, all that good stuff, now we want to know a little bit more about the specific program that you all are applying for City of Temecula. And again, I'll take this opportunity at this moment too to highlight the key comment here. This application is for City of Temecula. We understand that you all do a varied array of services in your organizations, and I will definitely, as we hit those narrative questions, kind of hone in on that as well. We are really focused in on what the funds are going to be utilized, what you're requesting for City of Temecula program only. Again, it's not to short side anything that you all do as an agency and any of the other data sets that you want to provide and what you all complete as an entire organization. But we really are focused in on just what the application is for City of Temecula. I know we typically, or those that do work with the grant writing process for other grants, there's large requests where you're submitting binders of information and cover letters for days and things like that, and extra sheets and stuff. We've really honed it down into the key information that we need, that we feel A, meets all of HUD's requirements, and then B, gets us through a process that we can present these applications in a fair and quick manner to those that are making those decisions as well. So again, you'll enter in the project name. Any of the starred locations, you'll see most of them will be. There are required fields there. So as you continue on to the screen, if you miss a required field, I believe it will flag a little message down either at the top or the bottom to let you know that you are missing some information. So again, kudos to the team for making that a pretty foolproof process here. We also request to see if you've received funds in the past. Looking at all the agencies here, you guys have all received CDBG funding in the past, so we thank you for that. And again, we utilize that question to more so gauge if we're receiving any new, if we're working with any new nonprofits that are coming into the game, or first time applicants for CDBG in City of Temecula, because as much as we know, we can't be all in every city, but I know some cities or counties may be running things a little bit differently, request different forms and formats of things. So again, we want to make sure that we're aware of that, and maybe may need to spend some extra time explaining some things or getting through those agencies on those processes. Again, the key element here, I will say, and some of the key information will be that's different from page 1 is the project location or the program location. This can be different from where the information that we're requesting on page 1. So your physical address, which is typically where we would send any physical correspondence. I think we've pretty much gone away from a lot of that at this point. It's either been communicated through email and then sent back, but we definitely want to acknowledge in case you have a different site where the actual Temecula program, again, the Temecula program will be implemented. So if it's different from a main headquartered office or anything like that, definitely acknowledge that location in this spot. The reason being is as we create the activities in IDIS or that database system, when I go in there, this is the address in which I would be acknowledging. It could be the same So obviously, if your mailing address or where the services are being rendered, there's no issues with that. But in case there is a difference, we usually have some agencies that do have that. Again, it does also allow you to go back and navigate to previous screens and key, again, save and save often. Any questions on screen 2? No? All right. Screen number 3 starts our narrative questions. This is the opportunity in which we start to allow you all to start telling us about the program, providing us the description, and again, I will highlight City of Temecula program. Again, in years past, and not just here, but I want to say in any of the grantees that our firm works with, we've worked with NOFA applications where we receive a lot of information. And sometimes it's so much information that when I read the program description, I still don't know what the funds are being used for and what the specific activities are being done in Temecula. So I see some shaking of the heads that yes, that can be very cumbersome. And I also want to try to minimize the amount of work that you all have to do. It's not to minimize how much I have to do in the long run, but it's also to help you all out as well. But at the same time, we do need to collect some key information. The biggest takeaway as you all have come to these workshop applications in years past, maybe you've heard it, maybe I've emphasized it as well, I know I do it as much as I can. The approach that I would take to these narrative questions, and all of the narrative questions, not just the first one, but what you see on subsequent slides, are the 5 W's. The who, what, when, where, and why. That is how I would approach to answer that question in every narrative question, because that's how, when I read it, I try to process it. So if you can do us all a favor, do yourselves a favor, if you keep it to those, the who, what, when, where, and why for each of those questions, that really helps us out. It really kind of helps framework a really tight response to where we are obtaining that information that we do need. Helps me out in the long run when we do these eligibility review forms and making sure that we can correctly display and provide the correct description to the Finance Subcommittee, which you all will substantially back up as well in case there are any questions, but that way we can provide them a concise and verifiable program. It also minimizes me having to go back and contact you all in case I don't understand something about the application, which has happened in the past, but again, it's guaranteed to happen in any grantee. But again, if you really take that approach, I think it definitely minimizes any back and forth that we might have. So the first one, and I do believe you are we limited on character count?
There isn't one that I initially set up, but there may be a system on that, none that I'm aware of, but don't
Perfect.
go too long.
Yeah, again, who, what, when, where, why, Al?
Yeah.
It's not to say that I believe your screen will continue on if you go past the edge of the box there, so in that regard, but I believe if it does exceed a character count, once you hit that next screen, you'll most likely be notified. But
We are familiar, whether you're new or old, we know what your organization is, tell us what the program in our city.
yeah, and again, you'll see that highlighted here on at least here on this one here. We want to make sure that your responses, again, for the program are for the program year of 23-24, and then also, again, how you specifically want to implement that program and those funds for the City of Temecula. You'll see a couple next set of questions here of describing the target population. So that first one is more of that general question. Let us know what those funds are used for and indicate. We want to get a little bit more know a little bit more about your target population. So low to moderate income individuals, type of demographics, any data that you have to support. You can supply additional sheets. That's not a problem. But again, you'd have to upload those at the very end if that's the case. But again, who, what, when, where, why? I don't think you'll need to actually supply those sheets, okay? We also want you to discuss the need for the program and the project within the City of Temecula. Again, this is probably one where I would say we got really broad responses in years past where obviously there's a need for the program that you all are running or else you wouldn't be doing it. We want to know the specific need within the City of Temecula limits. So if you can narrow down that kind of parameter and kind of your expertise on the types of program that you are applying for City of Temecula, provide those types of data. Again, we are appreciative of what, you definitely reference it on a bigger scale if you can to, but I would definitely focus in on the data set for Temecula.
And just as a cheat sheet, we've got 2 data sets you can use readily. That's the city's housing element, which I'll show you in the end of the presentation how to get to that. And you can also go to our CDB webpage with our consolidated plan. So those are the two places that have all the data that you need, or saying the programs that we need. All those things are in there for you. So the housing element and our CDBG consolidated plan.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, and in that regard, you all have participated in that process from the consolidated plan. I think it was just about a year ago, we were probably in this building again discussing the strategy, the strategic plan goals, and everything that we developed to discuss and how the city of Temecula will carry out these funds for the next 5 years. So again, those needs and those strategic plan goals and everything have already been established. A lot of your agencies here, again, are current CDBG funded organizations. And so in that regard, you guys do all meet a strategic plan goal, a strategic plan need that's identified in the con plan. Typically, you all fall under the public service aspect of the CDBG funds. And so I'll highlight some of the kind of dollars and kind of the requirements behind that in a little bit, but again, we appreciate y'all's time here and submitting the application and continued interest in the city of Temecula and running those services for those. The other two questions kind of on the screen here will describe any other similar projects and programs that you've run. This is where you'll definitely want to highlight just some basic information, maybe give us I think we also request some contact information from the last 5 years if you're running a very similar program in any other city. Kind of want to know that too. Again, it gives me more of a gauge if this type of program is also being run in other cities or anything like that, or if this is just a city-specific Temecula program, or it's something that you all are running in different organizations, different cities, that kind of stuff as well. And if it's been with federal funding or anything else like that. Lastly, on this screen, we definitely need to know some financial capacity information as well. So we want to know of any audit findings that you've had recently or any things that you, from a financial side. Obviously, the city of Temecula is really transparent in its information in how it wants to go about funding these types of activities, but we also need that information that's transparent from you all for us to determine an agency's capacity. We need to know if there are any financial issues from an organizational standpoint that we need to be concerned of or anything like that. If there's anything that's being addressed or currently, from any audit findings or anything like that, or any observations from your internal controls, we definitely want to know about that. Any questions on the screen? Set of narrative questions? No? All right. The next one, the next screen is where we start to talk a little bit more of the financial side. So I know we'll hit topics for those that are in finance, and if not, sometimes it's usually someone, if you're just the program person or like Diane yourself, you're the go-to and you're filling out the entire application. We're going to start talking about the budget request as far as on page 1, it'll actually request the amount that you are seeking, whether that's hypothetically 10,000, 15,000, whatever that is. This screen now goes into a little bit more detail of that breakdown. We also request some additional information about that, about your organization and kind of how this program fits within your overall organization. So if we do have any questions here, don't hesitate to let us know. We'll walk through this one here real quick. But what we look at it as a column. That's how you'd want to respond to this set first. So the first is your CDBG funded request. So the amount here for personnel, you'll enter that in. Non-personnel, and none of you all here are for capital funds. So typically what we see from the organizations and your budgets here is just personnel and non-personnel. So personnel being any staff time, admin time that you anticipate running the program, non-personnel, office supplies, consultants, anything else like that. You'll enter those in, and then you'll enter in the total budget. Again, this total budget amount should match what's on page 1 of your actual CDBG funded request. Okay. Leveraged funds is the next column. Leveraged funds is always a topic that we talk about with CDBG. It is not a required set of financial resources that are needed or required by CDBG and or HUD. That we do give this as an opportunity for an agency to acknowledge, again, within the city of Temecula, the program that you're applying for, if there are any other funding sources or any other funds coming into that specific program, this would be your opportunity to account for that. Okay, we'll want to know in comparison, is this only going to be a CDBG funded activity through this hypothetically $15,000 request, or are there additional funds that maybe Assistance League or Habitat is putting into that specific program, whether that's volunteer hours or direct services or anything else like that? you'll definitely want to account for that too. Same categories as well, and you can go about that and account for the dollars. Again, not required. It does enhance your application, but it does not guarantee or anything as far as that, as far as the CDBG funding. It just only enhances that. Gives us an opportunity, again, like I mentioned, to know from a reviewer standpoint, if this program wasn't funded by CDBG, will it continue? That kind of stuff. It kind of gives us those indicators there. I'll stop right there, but any questions on the first two columns?
So Assistance League has the organization budget.
Yep.
Then we have an operations school bell budget. It
Mhm.
funds 5 different cities plus unincorporated areas.
Okay.
And we separate out all the, what we spend by city and by municipality. So in filling out this form, and so let's say out of 1,800 children, we anticipate addressing 500 children in Temecula.
Sure.
I would pare down my OSB budget to those 500 children
That's
only
correct.
and show that as my total budget instead of my total OSB budget.
Yeah, and that would be that third column right there, that total program operating budget. Exactly, nailed it on the head right there. That's the number that we want to look at, because again, in years past, we would receive kind of like that larger overall program budget that would have maybe incorporated all those 5 cities that you mentioned or anything like that. And we see, again, it's not a direct comparison as far as something that will be denied in application or anything like that. But when we would compare it, we would see the Temecula request versus what's the overall budget. But like you said, there's additional funds that are being in there that only account for, the CDBG funds may only account for 500 out of the 1,800 specifically for Temecula. So yes, thank you. In that third column, we want to know what that budget would be for the Temecula program only.
Okay, so the first column, the budget would be the total OSB program.
The CDBG funded request?
Yeah, the first column, yes. That would be the total OSB budget, and then I pare down to Temecula program only, and that figure's different, or I start with
It could be.
Temecula only?
It depends, right? So I mean, if your overall Temecula program budget is your actual request, that's not an issue for us. This is where it gives us that snapshot to know, is your total request your total program budget, and that's where you're accounting. So what you could see is if you've got your total request, and if you have any leveraged funds, any additional funds, that would most likely then change your third column.
Okay.
So it's kind of that third column is a combination of the first two if you kind of add it across.
Okay, go across. Okay.
But if you don't have any leveraged funds, then yeah, it could be
Okay.
at same. Thank you, great question. And then that last column addresses the total organization budget. So in your specific situation, Diane, there too, we wouldn't want to know just the 5 cities. At that point, it's total Operation School Bell budget. That gives us the snapshot of, here's the Temecula program and how it compares to the overall Operation School Bell program. So if it's only those 5, then yeah, that's where you would include that number.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about the budget columns or anything like that? I know it can get a little confusing, but there's a reasoning behind all of that too. It gives us, again, snapshot of the program is specifically for Temecula and kind of comparisons overall as if you have leveraged funds as well. Again, CDBG does not require to have leveraged funds, but definitely you can account for that. And we also account for it on your QPR. So if you do have and you utilize those funds, definitely there's a row when you submit your quarterly performance report to do so.
Leverage fund is supposed to be just for CDBG use.
Just CDBG use.
Because we have like a grant from HUD used for the whole county, not CDBG, but the whole county.
For the whole county, yeah. So you may need to break down that number a little bit further. Again, everything revolving around CDBG and CDBG Temecula program. So again, yes, great question, and thank you for clarifying on that. Again, your leverage funds, what is going into this Temecula program? So I understand that you may be receiving a large grant, and it'll be for the county, and then you break it down by city. Yeah.
Temecula, but not CDBG.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah, but if you all incorporate that to parts of your Temecula program that you submit for your comprehensive fair housing program, let us know that too. But again, just for City of Temecula. So it might be a lot smaller number from what you show on the other side.
You take like a related percentage from this big grant because
Yeah.
I don't have a knowledge about
Sure.
what it for, so it's Temecula, but we said it's the whole county.
Mhm.
So maybe I take like a percentage from my
Correct.
total operation, what is the
What goes into Temecula. Exactly. Yeah, and you all have cost allocation plans and everything like that. Yep. I think, was there another question or comment?
You kind of answered it. same kind of idea. We serve several different areas. Temecula accounts for 20% of our census typically over the years. And so what I end up doing is doing like, here's our everything, 20% of that is for this.
Is your leverage part? Yep, exactly. All right. Any other questions on this one? No? Great. Continuing on to screen 5. This is where we'll talk about the continuation of those leverage funds. So if you happen to have leverage funds in that column, this is where we'll want to know about that source. You are able to add additional sources. So the first row on this one is your actual CDBG request. So again, that request amount being from page 1, being on page, I believe, so we're at page 4, that amount. And then you'll have the status, availability, everything here as a drop down has not yet applied or committed, in hand, or unknown. So right now your CDBG application would be unknown, right, at that point. It hasn't been yet determined. And if there's any additional comments. If you add an additional line, so see it's flagging me for stuff that I need to actually enter in, which is a good thing, before I add another column. So, or I'm sorry, add another row. If you are bringing in those leverage funds, we want to know where those funds are coming from, the type of source, what the amount is, and then you can add in the comments. It's a county-wide grant or whatever that receives, just a little bit of information. That way we can kind of see where that source of funding is coming from. But you are able to add, don't know if there's a limit on rows, but I don't think we've had any issues in the past with going past like 3 or 4.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, in that regard. So, any questions in regards to kind of the expansion and information about leverage funds? No? Awesome. And again, you can always navigate back to previous screens and save often. Screen 6, we want to indicate a little bit more so. This is kind of honing in on those public service program accomplishments and what you all intend to accomplish during that 23-24 program year. We also want to acknowledge the previous 2 rows of any previous year. So what you've done, and everybody has been receiving funds at least since then. So identifying what you've accomplished in the year 21-22, what you're anticipating and what you're expected to serve in our current program year. So how Q1 is going and kind of up to date of the application, because it's just right before the end of Q2. And then what you anticipate on providing services for an expected group of 23-24. Okay. Gives you also a narrative question down here to expand on that program and describe the benefit, the clientele of the, those beneficiaries of the program, letting us know the types of services again that you're providing, and discussing how unduplicated number. So again, we cannot duplicate from any program year in that regard, but every year you can recertify. So a client that is a client to you right now in this program year, if they are still eligible for your services and everything like that, come July 1st again, you redo a recertification and they can't count again. Okay, so what we're looking at and what this number here for unduplicated amount, the way I would explain this to you is determine that number of how many files you anticipate to serve with the amount requested on this application. So I'll kind of always go back to Assistance Legal Operations School Bell just for ease of reference, but because I know you mentioned the amount the program will probably serve about 1,800, but the amount that you're requesting on this application may be lower than that amount. That's the number we want to know, not that 1,800, because if that's the case, that's what we're going to be not necessarily holding you accountable to, but I may have questions at that point, because that's the tangible amount. And again, it's an expected amount, so maybe crunch some numbers, kind of look at your last year's data, what you've been accomplishing over the last few years. But those are the way I look at it, and the way you all should look at it is how many files I'm going to have at the end of the year, come June 30th, for this specific program with the amount being requested. Okay, so we know that you guys are definitely doing well above those numbers as for the program and as an organization, but specifically to the amount being requested. Okay. Any questions on that one? I know that one usually can stump us, or we sometimes get heavily inflated, unduplicated numbers, and I always circle back with those types of agencies just to make sure and say, hey, that's how many files you're going to intend to have. Like, oh, I didn't think about it that way, and yeah, we end up having a discussion to say, hey, let's look at that and make sure we're updating that number correctly if needed. Okay. Let's see, so screen number 7. What we are gonna have you do this, a lot of y'all, and we'll flag this with the message here, public service applications, you do not need to submit that. This is a specific screen that, it's an all-inclusive application here for capital funds, so a lot of our public works teams and everything like that utilize the same application. Habitat usually uses some of this information too as well, so you're unique and always unique in that year, for every year. But in that case, if you're our public service, we do treat you all as like more of a public service than we do like a city-run activity. But in that regard, you all can skip this screen. So easy for you all, you get to just click next. Same thing for here on the next screen. So screen number 8. You're pretty much done on screen 6 at that point of your application, without the exception of uploading all the required documents and things like that. Again, this is really only applies to our public works teams and city-run programs if we need for capital funds. So for ease of reference in this conversation, you all get to skip this screen as well. That leads us to screen 9 for the additional documentation and an actual electronic signature here. Again, this is where you will develop and upload your documents. I don't believe any restriction, PDF is typically what's been submitted up in the past. So first one being your cover letter. This is where you can address, organizational accomplishments, things like that. Let us know more about your organization. Where the application was, as I mentioned, who, what, when, where, and why for the program and the amount of funds you're requesting. So I would say if the cover letter is where you want to boast about the organization and everything else like that that you all amazingly do throughout every program year, definitely do so in that cover letter. Let us know who you are, let us know about the organization there. And so you'll upload that document. Your most recently filed 990. So for those, your nonprofit designations, submit your most current and up-to-date one. Not only does it serve as a purpose as a submittal for the application, I utilize that and put that in my current program year too. So, because I know based off of everyone's fiscal year, it can be, we're in process of the 990, we haven't gotten the full one, we haven't gotten the official one back yet, so everybody's in a different spot when it comes to their 990s, but as long as we have the most currently approved one there, let us know. So that's how we take this question here. Question?
So say like articles of incorporation and bylaws, I believe I have a combined document, but say I had 2 separate documents, does it let me upload 2 documents or just one each?
It's going to require you to upload both, so you can upload it twice. That's fine if it's all consolidated.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll take multiple.
Yeah,
Okay.
it will take multiple, but yeah, it's fine if they're consolidated. You just got to upload it twice. That's fine.
Perfect. Great question. Thank you. Next being a copy of your most recent and approved board of directors. Definitely want and need to know that information as well. Again, that kind of ties into your certificate of resolution. Definitely lets us know who's part of the organization and any things like that. Also avoids any conflicts of interest as well there too, as we make that part of the agreements as well. If there are any, let us know about that as well, because obviously we will do our checks and everything like that we can, but we also want to make sure that full transparency there, that's why we also are requesting that too. Like I mentioned, this will dictate right here your corporate resolution on how many signatures are required on your future agreement. So if you all have that certificate of resolution or corporate resolution where you'll identify one signature versus if not, then we'll require the 2 signatures on a future agreement. And if not, you have that certificate of resolution identifying whether that's the executive director or that person who's authorized to sign on page 1, that name. Or you could always even leave it as some I've seen in some grantees, they keep it pretty open-ended. They don't put the person's name, but the title. That's also why we request the title on page 1, because we know sometimes there are always transitions between different positions and things like that. End of calendar years, promotions, things like that in nature. So we're not immune to that. So sometimes I'll advise, even on your corporate resolutions, keep it to the title of whoever's going to be the signature. That kind of avoids, because obviously agreements come at a later date, right, in that regard. So between the submission of the application now and when we're actually entering in agreements, there can be changes. So sometimes it's too specific when you're putting in the name, and then we end up having to get you a new one, or it goes back to it's just easier to do 2 signatures. Any questions so far up to that point? No? All right, the next couple of documents, pretty standard. Your 501c3, your nonprofit designation, typically a one-sheeter, sometimes 2, depending on how the IRS has sent it over to y'all, but again, we are collecting this again from a record retention standpoint. It shows HUD that we are engaged with the agencies, that they are submitting it on a daily basis, on a yearly basis for our own record retention, and it's not just something that we're carrying over from a previous year file. Articles of incorporation, I know we kind of touched base on that as well, but again, you can submit that as a combined document, or those separate ones there as well. And then your certificates of insurance, like Brandon was mentioning earlier. The key component behind that too is, again, very much like your 990, not everybody's in the same time period with their certificates of insurance, right? Everybody's got a different date of when they started and when their policy dates end, but the requirements of those to be submitted there, it gives us that opportunity. We'll, based off of what was submitted last year, and if it's been updated, we'll definitely be requesting those. So at that point, we're kind of minimizing that gap too, as well of that request there. So we've got what you got last year. If it's been updated, we'll request it. And again, it depends, right? If you've got expiration dates that are just right before when we're starting to draft these agreements, we may be requesting it out again because it may not cover that period yet, and that could hold up an agreement or anything like that. I think Brandon definitely touched base on it, coming from, you may be receiving emails, because I know the city has gone to that electronic system Gallagher, so submitting that there. We are requesting it outside of that system, just for ease of reference, because I know sometimes we don't always want to rely on just one source for that documentation. So I know if you receive that request or any follow-up, definitely it's not spam, it's not phishing emails, follow that. If you do see it and it still looks a lot, shoot me an email. I don't think she's here, but I think it was Carly from Boys and Girls Club, I think. She had requested, she got an email from them, and she kind of thought it was a little odd, and so no, we were able to validate that for her. So I don't necessarily know what the emails look like all the time, so in that case, if you have any hesitations or questions, reach out to myself, reach out to Brandon, we'll clarify that for you all. But again, we are requesting it outside of that too as well, so we have it from a documentation standpoint that will meet HUD's requirements as well. And then once you've uploaded all of those documents, electronic signature. Go ahead and have that person go ahead, and they are hereby signing the signature there. And again, a date will be captured on the form that they submitted, and then when you hit submit, you should be getting a confirmation email that your application has been submitted. It also sends us an email, a notification that the file has actually been transferred over, and we'll actually receive not only just your application, but we do receive all of the attachments that you upload here as well as one package. So that's the benefit behind it all, saving a lot of paper each year now, so we appreciate that. That does conclude my presentation in that regard of walking through the actual application. Open forum as far as questions, anything else like that, any other items, if not about the application. I think Brandon wanted to touch base on some fair housing element stuff as well there too. Questions?
So just because I'm the messenger for our
Sure.
grants team and my notes may be subpar, the biggest change to the application from like previous years is that UEI number and replacing the DUNS number.
Yeah, that's the biggest and major change I would say from that aspect. And again, relaying back that information if you want to walk away with a hard copy, if not the email for that was to the staff sent there on how to obtain that UEI is available if you haven't already obtained it. So sometimes it might just be a matter of, and I think most financial side of things, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys might have been notified to transition over to that UEI number, so your agency might already have it. It just might be a matter of, hey, do we already have it? If not, we've got some steps and some printouts here to how to obtain that. Yeah. So, and again, most of you all have already received that notification as a nonprofit in some way or fashion. We're incorporating that here into this year's application. It wasn't part of that application last year where we continued with the DUNS number. Great question. Thank you.
Another thing I did want to add is we do have some new council members coming on this year, and there's a significant amount of funds that were distributed through some other federal monies that came through. So I think it's going to be really important for that finance subcommittee meeting this year. Sometimes we have attendees from recipients and sometimes we don't. I think it's going to be really critical that you're at that finance subcommittee meeting this year. And the reason I say that, it's not like there's any programs that have been identified that we don't want them as part of future funds, but I think there's a potential for some questions from new council members that want to ask and say, hey, what's this program? Oh, we gave this program $50,000 early in the year. Why are we continuing to fund this through CDBG? So I think it's going to be really critical for all of our nonprofit entities, city entities, to be at that finance subcommittee meeting, because there's probably going to be questions, particularly if we have a new council member that's never been through this process. So we do have a couple new council members, and they will be appointed in December for what subcommittees they're going to be on. So really important that you're at that meeting this year. Previous years I haven't emphasized it as much because we've kind of had people that are familiar, they know what you do, but this year it's going to be really important that you're there.
And that's in February?
Yes, thank you. I was actually going to address that. You'll, for those that do submit the application as part of that, and actually most likely any of the same email distribution list that went out will be notified of that finance subcommittee because it's an open. Public meeting. Yeah, I always public meeting versus public hearing, that kind of stuff. So yeah, but yes, it will be a public meeting. So encouraged and highly encouraged to attend and support your application that you are submitting for the 23-24 program year.
Any other questions about the application this year? I did want to share a couple of resources real quick again on the housing element and the CDBG page. Give me 1 second to pull it up. So we spent some time rewriting our CDBG page this year, trying to make it as user-friendly. My goal is that someone that has a middle school reading level could understand what CDBG is and what we do with our funds, because that's really how we should help assist the public understand what we're doing. So we've tried to reformat it, get news and notices up front and up top, walk everyone through what that process is. But all those things that we discussed, the action plan, citizen participation plan, are working okay today. And then another very, very important one I want to point out is analysis of impediments to fair housing. Those are all things that are giving you really good resources on how your programs can potentially address our CDBG funds, and please utilize those resources in your writing. Again, make them Temecula specific. You don't need to write us a novel, but please reference a goal or policy in those documents. It's critical as we continue to fund these programs. Yeah.
The link for the development, or excuse me, the consolidated plan doesn't seem to work. I was looking into that just so I can make sure my grant meets those, and it goes to a page of not there.
I'll take a look at it today
Okay.
and see what's going on. I know we had a minor administrative update that had come through. It was a minor thing, so maybe something happened with the upload. But I'll take a look at it for you. Okay. And if for some reason it's not done by the end of the week, you let me know. We'll take care of it. And then the other page, so that page just for reference is temeculaca.gov/CDBG. Very easy to get to on that. And then the other page we have is our housing element. This page will be revamped shortly. We're waiting on our final approval from the state of California. I was hoping for a Thanksgiving gift, but we haven't got that yet. As soon as we do, we will let you know. But our housing element is available here, and it's really important that you understand what's in that document as well. And we have all of our different presentations, but all those documents are available. Current draft is available on there as well. And if you're referencing something in there, it's really important on that. So that's that. And did you have anything else or other questions for the group? I did want to go ahead.
No official other questions or items again, but again, thank you all for the current year status of where we're going. I know we've got a lot of things going on and a lot of processes in place, so we're doing our best to make sure we can get you guys up to current and everything like that, so appreciate all of that time. Continue to do what you do. It's greatly appreciated because, again, what you all do is just a snapshot of what you do on a greater level for your agencies. I know we're talking about Temecula specific, and I wanted to address as far as kind of availability of funds. City of Temecula is on the smaller side of what we call the HUD grantee side of things. It doesn't make it any easier. Doesn't make you're up to par with every other grantee, whether you receive about $550,000 to $560,000 is what we anticipate on the city's yearly allocation in that regard. It can fluctuate. We do anticipate HUD releasing those around March, April is when we typically anticipate those funds to be readily available from the allocation from the HUD side of things. So that way when we take the actual draft document, it's carrying the amount that's expected versus an anticipated amount. But just so that way when we structure the meetings from the finance subcommittee side, it's well in advance of when HUD anticipates to release those funds. So we carry the amount that was in the current action plan, or 22, 23, so full transparency in that regard. What the city did receive for this current year is what we use as an anticipated amount. So again, that's why you may see some fluctuations that come out after a finance subcommittee, once we officially get the HUD allocation amount. Fluctuates a few thousand here and there, could be up, could be down, depending on how things are from a CDBG standpoint and things like that. But we fully anticipate the allocations coming through this year again, but we go through this NOFA process on a yearly basis to make sure that we are readily available for when those funds are coming out from HUD at that time. Question?
What is the public service percentage out of the allocation?
Yeah, great question. So it's a maximum percentage of 15%. So from that roughly 550, 15%, I think we usually teeter around like 82 to 86,000 in that realm from a public service side of things, okay? There is also a 20% max capacity for the administration side of the program. So that goes towards the actual running of programs, events like this, Brandon's time, my time, that kind of stuff, working all of our items and agreements and things, you know, request for reimbursements, quarterly performance reports, workshops, all of that stuff there. That's at a 20% cap. But I definitely do want to acknowledge and give kudos to the city of Temecula as well. They do implement that full 15% cap on a yearly basis and have for quite some time. Some grantees don't. It's their choice. Again, it's a max percentage, so they can come under. So depending on what the city priorities are at the time and what they've written in their comp plan, sometimes they may use only 10%. Some I've seen, you know, so, kind of as that being on the lowest end, just in case if they need other allocated funds for certain types of projects. But City of Temecula has been doing that full 15 for quite some time.
Frank, was there an email or a phone number we could have?
As far as our contact information.
Yeah, did I miss that?
No, typically, so when we send out the email blast, if you weren't a part of that, we'll definitely get you that. I can, I think we have your email from I'm sorry? Yeah, from previous year or anything like that, but I can get you contact information even before we leave out today too. I don't think we have it on the screen.
I have business cards here too,
Yeah.
if you need one, so I'm happy to give one to you today. If there's no more questions about the application, I did want to just take a couple minutes of your time. If you're an organization that doesn't have housing-related items, you're welcome to step out at this point, but I do think it's important. We want to continue to gather feedback as a part of our housing element each year, and it makes a lot of sense with kind of the synergies that we have with CDBG to continue to have these conversations. So I wanted to get a little feedback, you know, particularly from Fair Housing and other groups like Habitat on you know, any issues that you're seeing in the community with housing, any particular things that are standing out so that we can continue to evaluate you know, moving forward. Obviously, our homeless outreach team, we want to continue to hear kind of trends and things like that as we evaluate applications. So just wanted to open the floor for any feedback or trends that you may be seeing in the group. And I do want you to use the mic so we have this in case we need to take any specific notes. So I might put you on the spot. Yeah, on the spot.
All right, well, thank you for the opportunity. Again, I'm Craig with Fair Housing. Some of the most important trends we're noticing more recently have to deal with, obviously, affordable housing or the lack thereof, and how that feeds into the homeless issue. So there are some things that are being done to deal with that, building affordable spaces. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mission Heritage Plaza that recently opened in downtown Riverside. It's a Civil Rights Institute. It's a new Civil Rights Institute for inland Southern California, and it also is the new home offices for Fair Housing, and as well, there's 72 units of affordable housing in the same area. So we're spending a lot of energy trying to develop ways to work with the homeless population, and we find that seniors are particularly vulnerable as well. One of the other problems that I want to make sure that people are aware of that we're dealing with is when people have vouchers through the Public Housing Authority, Section 8 and other subsidized programs, there's no inventory out there for them to access. So these vouchers expire over time, which tends to feed right back into the homeless situation. So it's a real issue. But let me pass it on and put somebody else on the spot here.
I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, really appreciate that feedback. Just in terms of the city's direct response, we've got well over 200 units coming online probably in the next year and a half. Las Haciendas, Vine Creek project, and also the, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, I just call it the Arrive project off of Rancho Cal. So we do have a lot of units coming online, which is exciting. We've got anything from special needs housing as well, things like that. So that's exciting to hear. But I'll let our homeless outreach team give their feedback as well.
I can totally agree with the affordability issue. We're seeing that all the time. Another trend that we're seeing is really on the financial assistance side. A lot of the eviction moratoriums have expired. Programs such as United Lift are out of funding, and so this year we actually had a little less funding than in the past, and we went through that in the first quarter of the year, where typically we're coming right up to the end of the fiscal year, where it's like, shoot, we're getting close. Are we going to be able to spend all the money this year? We use it up within the first quarter, and we had to start creating a waiting list for families, which we ended up even stopping the waiting list because we just didn't have the funding available. So we're definitely seeing the need there. People are losing their homes, the rent. We've heard stories where to renew a lease, their rent's going up $1,000 on a 2-bedroom apartment. In Sun City. That's not Temecula related, but that's even what we're hearing from other people. So it's not getting any easier out there for people to find housing, and a lot of people are going to be ending up homeless, living in their cars or on the streets without these type of programs. So I want to thank you all for offering these programs and facilitating it, because they are extremely needed. So.
And I'll add a comment to that too as well. Thanks, Mike and team, for that information. Also, more the reason to be vocal and attend, like what Brandon was saying, highly encourage the attendance at that finance subcommittee. Support the application that's submitted. I know, like you had mentioned, there's been some a reduced set of funding this year in that regard, as compared to previous years or anything like that. But definitely stand behind that application, know the application, and if there are any questions, even if there aren't any questions, if you want to address a comment, I believe you get the opportunity to do so in that public meeting. So take that time to make that pitch and that presentation for those requested funds, for sure.
The other thing I'd like to encourage you is we do have a housing analyst that we've heard for the first time. First time we've had a dedicated housing person at the city of Temecula, which is great. So Fair Housing or homeless outreach team, Mary with Habitat, I want you to know that we do have that resource. So we've started, as we go out on our affordable housing inspections now, we now do proactive education. So they're getting Section 9 discrimination, or Section 8 discrimination information packets now. But I'd love to partner with you and make sure we connect you on that so you can get the latest information to us. If there's new laws, we want to be educating and we want to be proactive up front more than we've ever been. So we want to partner with you on that. And then homeless outreach, if there's anything we can do on that side too. Again, we have these affordable units. Most of the time they're in a pretty good situation, but if you're seeing a trend where some of our affordable units are having folks that are unable to pay, let us know. We want to get that proactive information. So I think that lag is part of the problem, right? If they don't know that resource is there, and by the time you're getting it, that check's not there, and they're already kicked out, we've lost. And so anything we can do on that side, I want to encourage you to reach out to us and reach out to me directly, and we will do some more proactive outreach to connect resources as best as possible. So
I want to mention for something we start from today. We start to have a new office in this area. I'm not sure where exactly. It's like close to Marietta, Menifee. So because we don't have any office serve this area, we have one in Marine Valley, we have one in Palm Springs, we have the main office in Riverside. So we rent a little office apart from, I'm not sure which city, but as my knowledge, it's close to Temecula, Menifee, Merritt.
Yeah.
So we will have a counselor there. Most of her work like education, and she will start today.
That's great. Yeah, definitely include. I would probably put that in your program description on the application. If it's also the services where your Temecula, where you're assisting most of the Temecula residents, but if not, also, I mean, I'm sure the city has plenty of locations, even if it's office space for a day out of the week or for a few hours. I know we've worked with fair housing in different counties.
We will start, as my knowledge, it's still limited knowledge, I just deal with the financial. We will start like a workshop, education, outreach. It's part from another program for UI with Hub, but it will help the area in general, because we have one, she's certified already, certified person. That means she have a knowledge about everything, and she worked with us from like 4 or 5 months, and because for a reason, we try to find close to her area. So that's why we started this month.
That's great news, and I can't relay how much that's going to mean to the community. There's a need for that. You know, we get a lot of calls. We refer them to Fair Housing. Your team does an amazing job providing the information that they need to make informed decisions. So I'm really excited to hear about that. We would again encourage you. We have space. We have room. We can work with our community services team to work on events, library space, whatever we need to do to make sure that those things are available and those resources. We get a lot of calls on the technical issues behind rent increases. And it's not like this straight rule. It's not very easy to administer from a city side because it's changing. There's different interpretations. So we're leaning on you for those things, and we want to bring your resources as close to the community as we can. So we encourage you to reach out to us. We'll get you connected and make our resources available to assist. So.
Do you know where that location will be? Is that what you're saying? You're not sure yet?
We rent like a little room from like a big community, but I don't know which one. Just based on it.
Maybe once you obtain that information, share it, and we can pass it on.
The first, as my knowledge, we will use like this spot for the education test and outreach, and after this, I think maybe the plan to move from this point around, because we have a lot of area not served just by phone, and we try to be there physically.
And if there's anything we can do we're going to revamp our housing page as soon as the housing element's done. I encourage you to take a look at it. Let me know if there's something that we can do to add on there, whether it's a fair housing icon, things like that. We just want to continue to improve that access to the resources. So let me know. We're happy to make improvements and move forward on those things.
Yeah, and definitely kind of CDBG related, make sure you account for those accomplishments in the QPRs that you guys submit. You know, there's the narrative sections and what other additional accomplishments y'all are doing. If that means, hey, we've now implemented that office and it's here, the services that are being offered, our education workshops, that kind of stuff, account for that. I know when we look at sometimes the QPR, we kind of look at it just sometimes as just like a number supported documentation of here's the amount of people that we served, but we definitely want to know what those additional accomplishments are. We are limited in what we can put in a narrative into HUD's database system, but in that regard, definitely utilize that. Utilize that when you're talking about it at the finance subcommittee, or when we're at the city council meeting and they're talking about adopting the recommendations, that kind of stuff. Being able to speak to those accomplishments is what gets your applications further through, for sure.
Beautiful. Well, with that, unless there's anything else, I'll be available for. Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to say thank you for this information about places to refer people. We receive, our home repair program is quite robust, so we receive calls for all kinds of things that are going on. And sometimes there's bad actors out there that are preying on homeowners and have convinced them to do things. And so we really love to have the referral to an agency that can help through those types of things. Over the last about year and a half, we've done about 6 home buyer orientations. We're in the home ownership, affordable home ownership area. And what we found is that we had about 70 full applications for one home that we're going to be able to be doing up in Lake Elsinore, but then also we have 6 coming online here in Temecula, probably within the next 2 years. But we also found that there was a percentage of those applicants that could qualify with some layered down payment assistance. And so that we found is a gap in terms of being able to help those people through that process and being able to get them to home ownership. They would qualify, it's just that they couldn't there's not enough time to walk through all of those layering assistances that are out there. And there are funds out there from the county's down payment assistance. And I know Temecula, City of Temecula is participating in that, and through the state as well. So that was one of the areas that we found there's a gap, and so we're launching a real estate and education center here in Temecula. So for home buyer orientation and helping people through that process.
Send that our way. Again, that's something we'd like to have on our housing page. Someone should be able to hit our housing page and get all this information. That's
Yes.
our goal, to revamp this whole page.
Thank you. And I know we've referred people to the housing page, so, and there were some great resources there for them. Because we can't assist in terms of someone who is now with a bad actor, because there's some legal ramifications there, but we want them to be able to be helped, because it's obvious that there was something that happened there that they could get assistance, so.
Definitely
thanks-
send that info
thanks
our
for
way.
that.
Well, again, thank you all for your time today. Frank, do you have anything else to add?
No other closing argument.
All right. Oh, Law and Order, Frank Perez. Dun, dun, dun.
No other closing items there, y'all. Again, thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it. We're here to stick around if you have any other questions or any items. But again, thank you for taking your time out of your day to join us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I want to get you connected with Heidi.